Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Friday, June 4th. I'm Gary Stevens. It is the first Friday of the month, which means we spend this particular segment spotlighting the Holland Department of Public Safety. Normally, we either spotlight the police department or fire services. But it's a little bit of a special situation today because we are joined not only by Holland Department of Public Safety Police Captain Bob Buursma, but by the Fire Marshal for the City of Holland, Bret Groendyke. They join us via the Zoom connection. Gentlemen, good morning, and for both of you, welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Morning, Gary, and thank you.
Morning, Gary. Morning, Cap.
And that is Bret Groendyke. Before that, Bob Buursma. If you have a question for these gentlemen, you may certainly call us at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. I will ask each of you specific questions which are dealing with what we are going through right now. And then we'll take a look ahead to a subject that both of you will be involved with, and that, of course, is the Independence Day holiday. First of all, for you, Holland Police Captain Bob Buursma. The Memorial Day weekend, the first weekend of the summer vacation season. And to a certain extent, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, it was relatively quiet for the Holland Department of Public Safety with police. A lot of people around, but a lot of people were behaving themselves. And I don't think you had too much work to do in terms of accidents. Again, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, you're exactly right. You know, Memorial Day is often considered the unofficial start to summer. But really, our call volumes were no different than any other normal weekend. Not a lot of crashes. I'm sure the weather played into that. It was cold, not the nice warm Memorial Day weekend we had all hoped for. And I'm sure that kept people indoors and maybe not doing some of the other activities that may have contributed to some additional problems we may have dealt with had it been a lot warmer.
And of course, the reason why I brought that up, Bob, is the fact that to a certain extent, even though the restrictions on outdoor activities started after Memorial Day weekend on June the 1st, still a lot of people were enjoying and getting out and about, really almost like the first weekend of freedom during this time. And that's why I thought maybe you guys were going to be a little bit more busier than you were.
Yeah, I mean, we had no idea what to expect. Fortunately, we had nothing overly serious happen over the weekend, so we were very thankful for that.
The topical question I wish to ask Holland Fire Marshal Bret Groendyke is really one that is regional in nature. We the National Weather Service has its hazardous weather outlook. It publishes every overnight. And I'm going to quote exactly from what it says here. Elevated fire danger this afternoon and through the weekend. Very warm, dry, and breezy conditions could lead to hazardous conditions as in an elevated fire danger. It's pretty dry out there, isn't it, Bret?
Yeah, it has been. And I think also looking at NOAA, the long-term climate, at least locally here, we've been in a mild to more than mild drought. And anytime you get relatively low humidity and a high wind and warm temperatures and high angle of the sun, there is a considerable risk or elevated risk for fire danger.
And another thing, and I want to get your thoughts on it, it does not involve Holland, Bret, but maybe you've seen the pictures or the videos up on Mackinac Island where a Brigadoon cottage went up in flames, not completely burned. It was contained to the third floor. But what I understand, not only did the island's fire department help, but St. Ignace, they got on the boats and they sped over. It took about 45 minutes for them to get there, but their quick work really helped. And again, and we talked about this before, Bret, say, for example, if Holland Fire Department has an issue, neighboring departments go in, if not helping on the fire, at least covering while Holland's taking care of the blaze.
Yeah. And if you can imagine the mutual aid of needing, ferry boats to move your folks or move the firefighters out to the island. I mean, that's something that would never cross our mind here, but it's common practice for them. I visited that fire station, and so it's interesting to see the dynamics that they work with and the historic structures that they work with. And if it was a week before or just before that, Calumet, Michigan also had a very substantial fire in their downtown area and burned or lost several buildings. And so, yeah, it's been busy in the fire service throughout our state. And if you can't look farther than the media and see it there. So.
Yeah. Again, I thought about the fire departments in our area when I saw the video of the situation up on Mackinac Island. Now, if you got a question for Captain Bob Buursma or Fire Marshal Brent Groendyke, they are with the city of Holland. They'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. We are now in the month of June, gentlemen. Either one of you can step in on this particular point here. Do we have to remind ourselves of some safe habits, be it with fires for you, Marshal Groendyke, or with motoring or being out and about with you, Captain Buursma? Is it almost like that? I'll use this as an example. When we have our first snow of the year, people forget how to drive in the snow, and we have all sorts of mayhem and mischief. Do we have to do that as well in the month of June, or am I over exaggerating things?
No, I think that it's a fair assessment. Obviously, it's a completely different type of hazard than driving in icy, snowy conditions. But as the weather gets warmer, busy weekends, people traveling, more miles being driven on the road, so to speak, it's just a good time to remember that there is additional traffic, additional pedestrians, and motorcycles are out there. As the weather warms up, we're going to see more and more motorcycles on the road. Very important for motorists to be cognizant of them. Make sure you're watching for the motorcyclists and being safe, coming to that full and complete stop when you're at a stop sign, driving safe. And of course, the other thing is in Michigan, it is construction season. And if you haven't been around and seen some of our construction areas in whether it be MDOT or in the city right now, there's a lot of them out there. I was headed south. I had to go to Chicago the other day and got in quite a jam up trying to get south on 131 onto 196. It's getting pretty backed up. And I think the thing to remember with those is drive courteous, be safe, take your time, don't rush it. Especially when there's heavy volumes going through those construction zones, it's going to be slow simply because the volume of traffic going through sometimes 2 lanes down to 1, it's just not going to be as efficient. And the best thing to do is just take your time, plan ahead, and drive safe.
As for Brent, on your side, with the fire, obviously, more people are going out camping. In fact, we
Sure.
take care of those campfires because that could cause all sorts of trouble if you don't take care of them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that we forget that the same day that the Great Chicago Fire happened, in 1871, most of this city burned down. Also, obviously, there were different human actions that were taken at that time, different thoughts about fire and building construction, things like that. But on a day or anytime there's elevated fire danger coming up here, we get concerned about people burning in the city, having campfires, pitching cigarettes out of their vehicles. And it's interesting when you think about the weather and the dynamics and wind. And we had one of the more costly fires last year occur because of about a 44-cent cigarette, which cost about an $800,000 loss. And it's things like that while it's incidental in its nature, there are elements that go towards being mindful, to your point, about reducing our risk about our everyday activities.
616-395-1450 if you have a question for the Holland Department of Public Safety Police Captain Bob Buursma and Fire Marshal Brent Groendyke. Let's look ahead. The Independence Day holiday is coming up. The 4th in itself is a Sunday, which means for the most part, the holiday weekend will be a 3-day weekend at the least, 3, 4, and 5. Either one of you can start discussing some of the challenges that will be facing your departments, different ways, but challenges that the Independence Day weekend, the 4th of July weekend will present.
Well, I think for us, and I think that kind of segues right into the topic that we had mentioned that we wanted to discuss. as summer comes, the holidays, and then of course fireworks. And we deal with a lot of fireworks complaints in and around the 4th of July. And a couple of things I'd like to highlight on that. First of all, quite a number of years ago, Michigan legislature legalized the use of consumer grade fireworks. Now these are the ones that shoot up in the air, they explode, that type of a thing. But it also then limited when they can be used, or allowed municipalities and counties to limit the days. And most people are aware of, it was the 10 holidays, the day before, day of, day after, that's when you could use them. That is all gone. That statute doesn't exist anymore. It's different what days they are allowed. The big change was around the 4th of July. Basically from July 29 all the way through July 4, they can be used each day from 11 a.m. until 11:45. In addition to that, you've got Memorial, and I know we just passed Memorial Day, but both Memorial Day and Labor Day, the 2 days prior to the holiday. So you can use it on the Saturday and the Sunday, but not actually on the holiday. And then New Year's Eve from, I think it's 11 a.m. until 1 a.m. into the new year. Those are the only times that those are allowed to be used. If we do have violations, and we have cited people a number of times in the past, the way the legislature wrote the law, if you are using these consumer grade fireworks outside those timeframes, the court, and the language that the legislature uses, shall impose, not may, not up to. The court shall impose a $1,000 fine. For us, we don't necessarily want to write violations where someone's going to pay $1,000. We prefer not to and have people comply, but at some point we may end up having to do that. And so the thing we ask is just please be aware of the law, what it is, when it's allowed, and then comply with it and use it on the days that they are permitted.
Quick question before we get to Brent Groendyke and fireworks safety. Does that deter that $1,000 fine? Is it really a deterrent based on your being the department's experience in having to deal with people who are, say, setting off fireworks beyond those times? Does it deter, or do they say, especially if it's a whole group of people saying, we'll take care of it,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the challenges is you can see the fireworks blasting, up in the air, shooting off. And I've done those details back when I was working the road. Trying to actually find who's letting them off is the real challenge. And showing up, and saying who's doing it. But on those times when we do it, most people are not aware. And we explain it to them. We prefer to start with warning, explaining, here's what it is. We're not trying to be punitive. And most times, once individuals find out the penalties, they're very quick to say, I didn't know. What were those days? I'm going to stick to those days because I don't want to risk the fine.
Now, fireworks safety, Fire Marshal Brent Groendyke. It's one thing to buy those consumer grade fireworks and shoot them off. It's another one to do it safely. And unfortunately, more often than not, we have instances, and especially it's the youngsters that do it. They fire off the fireworks and they don't do it safely, and we have tragic results.
Yeah, we saw in 2018 and then in 2019, we saw structural losses related to fireworks or the improper disposal of fireworks. 2019, it was, we could not rule out that fireworks were involved in a garage fire at an apartment building. And in 2018, we could not rule out that fireworks were involved at an apartment building fire, both of those fires being on the east side of the city. And so those represented significant losses to those families. I mean, you got folks that are left homeless in 2018, and you've got people that are left without their vehicles in 2019. Interestingly enough, last year, at least in the city, which was probably a year that I think we saw the most usage of commercial fireworks, at least that I can recall in my life. Last year was just incredible, the amount of fireworks that you could see in the sky. And I think it was indicative maybe that there was no major displays and that folks just went out and kind of did their own displays. So we'll see what this year brings as far as injuries and the amount of fireworks that we see, because I believe I had read and maybe you know, or Capt, maybe you know, but I believe I'd read that there's actually less consumer fireworks available this year just because the supply is lower. I thought I read something to that effect, that there was less in that way. So it'll be interesting to see what this year brings. But yeah, to your point about safety, you shouldn't be intoxicated at any point in time, no matter what your age is, if you're using them. If you shouldn't be allowing young children to use fireworks at any point in time, anything that explodes, anything that's hot. There just has to be some common sense regulation that folks use responsibly amongst themselves to go out and celebrate in whatever manner that they're going to do it.
One other question, then we'll take our break, gentlemen. And if somebody can correct me, that's fine. No problem about this. Normally, we didn't have it last year, and hopefully we'll have it this year, the fireworks over Lake Mac on the 4th of July, the municipal fireworks. Obviously, it's a professional company coming in, and they fire it off I would say they fire it off a barge, and they do they take precautions because they're professionals. It's their livelihood. Tell us a little bit about logistics of making sure that it's safe. How much does the Holland Department of Public Safety work with these companies when they do have in this case for the 4th of July, the municipal fireworks, when they do have a planned fireworks show? How much logistic work has to be done either on the fire side or the police side to make sure it's safe and everybody has a good time?
So we go through and do the permitting process. The city's involved with the permitting process for any show that's going to be shot in the city. So that has to be approved. There's a permit that has to be approved for that entire process. And then there's the actual inspection of the show prior to the shoot, which includes determining, is it going to be a manually shot show? Is it a computer? Is it shot using some sort of a computer or electronically fired? What are the size of the shells? Because there's, depending on the size of the shell, there's a distance from occupied structures or potential hazards that has to be utilized, that we evaluate during the inspection process. And then if it is going to be on a barge, there's approval that has to be granted through the Coast Guard, through the DNR. So it's not just, hey, we're going to go out and have a fireworks show. There's, due to events that have occurred in the past where there's been injuries and loss of life, these events are regulated in such a way to hopefully prevent those type of events from occurring again in the future. So again, that's something that I go out and do. I do the inspections for these events. And if it's going to be on a barge, you have to make sure that the crews are protected. You need total counts of people, where they're going to be on the barge, that they have life jackets with them, right down to minutia like that you'd think wouldn't be such a priority, but there's different risks involved in any event, and they have to be mitigated in a responsible way.
The day of the event, obviously, is the other point I was bringing, because obviously you can do all the planning all ahead, but still, day of event, obviously, besides having people deployed, officers and reserves, in your case, Captain Buursma, for crowd control, Bret, in the case of the fire services, making sure in case there is a situation that happens the day of, you guys are ready to respond as quickly as possible.
Right. Yes. On the police side, we've got plenty of staff around, not only for the crowd control, but also for obviously the traffic afterwards. One of the challenges with the location that the city does it at Collin Park, which is a great location, but when everybody is trying to leave at the same time, obviously there's no roads that go towards the lake because you can't get there. So everybody's funneling towards the same few roads trying to get out, and our staff just does the best they can. Again, you have just too many cars on a roadway system that can't handle it. So it always takes some time, but we'll do the best that we can. And then, of course, we coordinate with the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office, and they'll have their Marine Patrol out on the lake surrounding the park.
In that regard, and I'm just thinking, maybe I'm looking ahead, again, right now, unless you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it's still a go for the municipal fireworks for this year, or am I talking about 2022 in that regard?
I've not heard anything yet that it's been canceled, but I certainly cannot say, with the pandemic and the way things are constantly changing, we're obviously optimistically very hopeful that it'll happen.
And the other point I was going to make is the fact that maybe for next year or whatever, could be a situation similar to what we have at tulip time, when certain roads are, shall we say, traffic is geared a little bit to get people in and out a little bit at tulip time, especially on the Saturday music parade, which is the biggest attendant of the three parades. Maybe, say, okay, 16th and 16th Street, we're going to have it one way east heading out of here to get people funneled out, or, yeah, I know it'll be causing inconvenience, people trying to get in, but if you want to get people out of the way, you might have to do some of that jury rigging of traffic to accommodate to get people out as quickly as possible. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, Bob.
Yeah, the problem is these roads are designed the way they are as two-way, and the city then takes on a significant liability if you take a one-way without all the proper engineering controls in place and just temporarily try to make it two-way. Somebody comes out of a driveway and doesn't realize that now they're going into oncoming traffic. There's a huge safety concern there and liability. So we would rather take the time and do it as safe as possible, which is using the roads pretty much the way they're designed. Obviously, around the parades, like you mentioned, we do convert 7th Street to two-way traffic. We have to, but then we've worked in the past with the street department to try to do it as safely as we can. It goes very slow, but doing something that for the fireworks, something that I'm not saying we could never look at it, but it would be very challenging.
Okay, I'm just thinking out loud. Not only with the Holland
ideas are always good,
with the Holland experience, and also in the past I've gone to University of Michigan games in Ann Arbor, and boy, they when they have to deal with 100,000 people trying to get out of the big house at one time, it is a pain in the what.
Yes.
Gentlemen, we've been talking about the circumstances around the upcoming 4th of July, and the important thing is safety. Yesterday, we had Sergeant Todd Wagner from the Allegan County Sheriff's Department on talking about Operation Dry Water, what they're conducting, making sure we don't have drunken boating. Real quick, Bob Buursma, we had Click It or Ticket, I think, this past weekend as the safety initiative. What about the 4th of July? What have you heard from the State Department of Highway Safety Planning?
I've not heard anything from Officer of Highway Safety, OHSP, about any campaigns then, although I can pretty much guarantee that there will be both the Click It or Ticket or, being extra patrols, being alert for drunk drivers. And that time of year, especially with the holidays, officers are always cognizant of it. Well, anytime we are, and watching for signs of intoxicated drivers, and then taking appropriate action if you encounter somebody who has been drinking and driving.
With that, gentlemen, I want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Holland Department of Public Safety Captain Bob Buursma with Police Department and with Fire Marshal Bret Groendyke. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your thoughts. Both of you have been with us before. We look forward to having both of you with us again, either individually or together during the rest of the year. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Bob Buursma, Bret Groendyke from the Holland Department of Public Safety.